My name is David Madison, the 27th of June, 2020. I was a Methodist minister for 9 years, but by the time I had finished my PhD in biblical studies, my belief in God had evaporated. That wasn't supposed to happen. Seminaries exist to manufacture clergy. But if you study the Bible too carefully, too closely, the errors and flaws become all too obvious. In this series of videos, Bible Blunders and Bad Theology, I will discuss a lot of them. This is episode 17. Believe it or not, just 100 years ago, astronomers thought that our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, was the whole universe. Then Edwin Hubble, in the mid-1920s, proved that Andromeda is another galaxy far away. And the Space Telescope, named after him in our own time, has captured images of billions of other galaxies. So there are trillions of other solar systems and many more trillions of planets. Where is the evidence, let alone proof, that all this was created by a God? That's an assumption derived from the first chapter of Genesis. Nor is there any evidence, let alone proof, that such a God, in charge of trillions and trillions of planets, is keeping track of the thoughts and deeds of 7 billion human beings. Why bother? What a blunder, isn't it? That when God inspired the Bible, he neglected to tell us of the true size and scope of the cosmos. The Bible leaves us with the impression of a limited God. And boy, the God of the Bible is a control freak. And this is where the bad theology comes in. Jesus said this in Matthew 12:36, I tell you, on the day of judgment, you will have to account for every careless word you utter. That's grim. In the Sermon on the Mount, he says this, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. God's keeping track of such things? So this God who manages trillions of planets is keeping track of the state of arousal of every human being. Come on, this is really bad theology. Do Christians really want this Jesus? I find that Christians really aren't honest about Jesus. Liberal Christians especially, who want to champion Black Lives Matter, help refugees, and support gay rights, and hey, those are all good things. They claim that Jesus welcomed everyone and loved unconditionally. But that's not what we find in the Gospels. In Mark 16, we find this horrible Jesus script. The one who believes and is baptized will be saved, but the one who does not believe will be condemned. This is not unconditional love. In the famous Matthew chapter 25, which everyone loves, the story of the separation of the sheep and the goats at the last judgment, we find these words. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. Yes, of course, that's brilliant. But what about those folks who didn't live up to this standard of compassion? And these will go away into eternal punishment. In other texts, Jesus speaks of fire as punishment, wailing and gnashing of teeth. This is not unconditional love. The Bible's small cosmos is a blunder, and the angry, snooping God as depicted by Jesus himself is bad theology, silly theology. Come on, Christians. This is the 21st century. Isn't it time to grow up?